Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel. My name is Pauline Vasquez, NXUnite team member at Nexus Marketing, and your moderator for today's panel. Today's panel topic is Scale Your Reach, Redesigning Association Events. As usual, before I introduce our panelists and we jump into this fascinating topic, I do have some logistics to cover. NXUnite by Nexus Marketing serves as a powerful community resource designed to foster connections and facilitate lasting relationships within the mission driven sector. On NXUnite, you can find upcoming industry events, suggested influencers to follow, trusted solutions, and cost driven podcasts. NXUnite also hosts webinars, demos, and of course, these panels with experts, such as these lovely folks with me here today. NXUnite is brought to you by Nexus Marketing, a digital marketing agency specifically dedicated to the mission driven sector. Our team accelerates organic growth through key digital channels such as SEO, AI visibility, HubSpot, branding, and design. Today's 45-minute long panel will include time both for questions curated by my team and questions from you all, our lovely audience. At any time during the panel, please feel free to submit your questions via the chat. We will spend the second half of the panel addressing as many as we possibly can. All right, jumping on to introducing our lovely folks here with us today. First, we have Bill Zimmer, Head of Marketing and Creative at 360 Live Media. Bill is the Head of Marketing and Creative at 360 Live Media. He is a marketing and creative veteran who believes the best idea is the one that gets results. For 20 years, Bill has built brands, led integrated event marketing campaigns, and developed business strategies that deliver high impact for corporations and nonprofits. Bill, thank you so much for being here with us today. Next, we have Joe Colangelo, co-founder and CEO at Bear Analytics. Joe believes in the power of first-party data generated at events, which is often locked away in disparate systems, but ripe for disrupting future value generation at face-to-face engagements. His company, Bear Analytics, helps tear down complex data barriers, ensuring clients understand their data and use it to fuel both engagement and revenue growth. Joe, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
And lastly, we have Lawrence Gibbons, Senior Director of Partnerships at eShow. Lawrence has spent the last decade at eShow. That progression from leading technology solutions on the ground to shaping alliances at the executive level gives him a perspective on the industry that's both deeply operational and strategically informed. A trusted voice in the event and technology space, Lawrence has worked alongside associations as they've adapted to the changing role of technology in their events. Lawrence, thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here.
All right. Now we go ahead and jump into our panel questions. So first, to start us off, what are the biggest signs that an association's flagship event is overdue for a redesign? Bill, I'll let you start us off.
Thanks. Well, overdue for a redesign is probably something that people have seen coming. Fewer attendees, exhibitor attrition, sponsors not, contributing year over year. I think that the existential question is really, how are we going to be able to design events that are more valuable to the organization and the people they serve? So there are leading indicators that tell us something needs to change, but ultimately it's doing something with that information.
Thank you so much, Bill. Joe, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think Bill's exactly right. And oftentimes I find that folks are put in a reactive position when they're in that position. So you're looking at the soft signals, some hard signals. Maybe you're looking at some of your survey results, and you're like, you know what? I think we need to retool and recalibrate here. I always kind of viewed events as you should take kind of like a car manufacturer's mindset. They put an automobile into the field, and you'll see it kind of modern. Every 4 to 5 years, you'll have a big update with little updates on an annual basis. That's a good kind of general trend to follow in the events industry. And you always want to be, I think, especially nowadays where you're really fighting for attention and footprints, you're always going to want to be even challenging your own kind of existence. Like, what are we the best in class at? What can we get better at?
All right, love that. Thank you, Joe. Lawrence, what do you think?
Excellent points. I would even take even a simple approach is your event the exact same thing you did the last 3 years? At this point now, if you're not innovating and changing on a yearly basis and looking to see and analyzing what you've done year over year over year, you become stagnant at this point. People are used to change at a very accelerated rate as opposed to what used to happen in the past where people looked for stability, looked for familiarity when they attended events. Now there is a different need for stimuli. Our attention spans are totally different. What grabs our attention is totally different. So at this point now, if you haven't even analyzed what you've done over the last 3 years, you probably are overdue to kind of rehaul and take a look at your event.
I love that perspective. I know there's like a saying that if it's not broke, don't fix it. This could lead to stagnation to a lot of associations. So I love that innovation always happens on a yearly, maybe even daily basis. So thank you so much for your thoughts on that first question, panelists. Moving forward to our second one, what do you think are the core elements of an event experience that actually drive year-round engagement? Joe, I'd love to hear your perspective on this first.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to take it more from the data lens, just transparently. So when you actually look at folks that are doing a really good job of harnessing the data that's coming in from their event, and maybe also bringing in other touchstone elements, whether it's ongoing learning, ongoing membership from the association standpoint, or even things just like engaging with other content. Discovery, I can't overemphasize the importance of discovery. So your events should have an element to them where they're a discovery engine, discovery of services, discovery of products. Who doesn't like a good discovery of network, right? And that could be partners, prospects, clients, mentors, all of those kind of things. But I think often discovery comes with some of the things that we do natively as event organizers. But if you can be purposeful in how you engineer discovery, that's a really critical thing. Don't get me wrong, it's really hard to measure, and it's one of those things that attendees and exhibitors, they know it when they feel it, and there's really no counterfactual. You don't have folks going, you know what, I really like the event when I don't find things that I'm looking for, right? It's like everybody's actually going to row in the same direction there.
Thank you so much for those insights, Joe. Lawrence, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, for me, I would say what's going to differentiate everything going forward is how is your event specialized or curated for me? What is my journey going to be like compared to everyone else that's going to be there? Because what I may be, and it leads into what Joe just said, what I'm looking to discover, what I'm looking to experience is personal to me. And I start to need a curated experience for that. Who are you going to say that I need to be paired with? Joe's background is really going to lead into this, and so is Bill when we start talking about, how are you going to connect me with all the touch points that I need to connect with over the course of 3 days? I need a more direct, curated experience that will enhance this for me to make this worthwhile. Like I said, you have competitors out in that space. There are limited dollars that are being allowed to allot for people to attend these events. You're going to have to differentiate and create some kind of experience that allows me to have a much more personal touch in order for me to engage with you.
Yes, and I'll just build on that, Lawrence, if that's cool, because I feel the same way. Segmenting is something, in marketing, we're always talking about segmentation and tailoring a message to the right person, whether they're first timers or emerging professionals or executives. And just, I think the expectation is there now that you will get personalized content, journeys, community building moments where the serendipity will be engineered. So you'll be in the right room with the right people. I think that the expectation since COVID has really elevated that if I'm going in person, every single minute of it needs to be personalized.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that wonderful discussion, panelists. So building on from what Bill said about connecting the right people to, or no, making sure that the right people are in the right room, I have here our third question. When starting a redesign, how do you balance the needs of longtime members with the expectations of newer prospects? So I am going to hand this over first to Lawrence.
Sure. So actually, that kind of piggybacks on what we were just talking about, right? You're going to have these curated type experiences, right? My journey as a first time attendee is totally different from somebody who's been in the industry for 20 years and has built their own network and has a very specific directive of who they're looking for, whether it's continuing education, where they're looking to be, what interests them, right? You really are going to have to create these curated tracks and experiences and journeys that are going to lead into all these different types of journeys that happen. Uh, Bill's perfectly positioned. Like he said, the marketing side of it will help you find those channels. And then Joe's expertise in what they do will help you really dig into the analytics and reveal what these people are looking for, what they've done in the past, maybe things they're missing out on that they don't realize. These types of curated journeys are going to be the bedrock of what's going to push the industry forward in the next coming years.
That's great to hear. Thank you so much, Lawrence. Joe, how do you see it?
I think if there's one thing that event organizers have working against them, so if the event is their product and they consider themselves and they're going back to their R&D lab to go, hey, how are we reimagining or re-engineering the product, is most of the time we're talking about an event that's annual. So you don't have a shot on goal to put something in market, learn from it in the next 2 weeks, rebake it. You don't have the luxury that folks like us in software have. We can just iterate a million times. So without that iteration loop, there's a risk center that comes with it. And so that's where we kind of preach, you want something to be evolutionary, not revolutionary. Don't go and tear down everything and go, we're building it all up from the ground up. Take specific areas where you're like, this is probably either the area that's longest in the tooth, or we're getting the most blowback from our attendees that we want to be able to enhance and dazzle and delight, and go and really put, your 10x effort into that, and then start to permeate from there. We've seen that kind of methodical approach really bear fruit, because you can measure what's new, what's working, you learn from it the next year. And those folks that have been with you for the duration of the journey, who tend to be most senior, who tend to be those that bring their larger teams, you absolutely need them to be core. They don't feel like you're upending what you've done. And so that kind of balance is probably what I would preach.
Thank you so much, Joe, for your insights. Bill, what's your take on finding that balance?
Yeah, no, I agree with Lawrence and Joe. Like, when we're marketing an event or we're, pitching it to our attendees, exhibitor sponsors, it has a story, but that story has to take different forms when you're talking to somebody who's loyal, been there forever, values tradition, values the relationships, and knows what the event has been, versus a new attendee who needs clarity and they got to make a case to go and spend the money and be there. So when we're redesigning, I'm thinking about separating purpose and format. If the old format of the awards luncheon was to provide recognition, maybe we could provide recognition in a different way and not have the, same old format, right? So it's educating the people, the stakeholders within the organization, whoever's involved, to really take a critical eye that can we still achieve our goal, but maybe do it differently.
So that's a really good point, because I think one of the areas that you're actually starting to see, or maybe starting is actually a poor word, that you're continuing to see, events are bleeding into the streets around the venues that they're hosted in. Yeah. And of course, the cities and the venues are fantastic arbiters of that. And a lot of large organizations that, that's not their first rodeo in that location or that venue. They know how to dazzle and entertain their prospects and customers in that city. And so kind of facilitating that while staying relevant, I think is something that, again, put my data lens on. You're starting to see soft signals that those things are happening, but there's not the hardest level of measurement. And as that starts to come to fruition, I think we're really going to start to see the organizer go, you know what, we're actually doing more outside of these four walls as well. And taking credit for those business signals that they're helping to create.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you so much for unpacking that question, panelists. There are a lot of lenses we could look at this question from, but everything that you have mentioned is a great start for our associations to think about. And all right, this is actually one of the last questions that I'm going to ask before we start opening up to our lovely audience. So, for you audiences, this would be a great time to get those questions in our chat so we could address them as much as possible. So, for our next question, this might also be piggybacking from what Joe and the rest of our panelists have already been talking about in their past questions. But how do you use data from past events to predict a success of a new format? And with that, Joe, I'll come to you first for this one.
Yeah, so that's the only thing we start with, right? So if you have to use history as a touchstone to understand and help to articulate what success looks like. Um, Oftentimes, the biggest forecasting hat that folks have to put on every year is on the budget side. Like, there's no events that are run without a budget. So at some level, you got the Excel sheet up, you're trying to figure out how to make it work. But when you look at your historical data, it's going to allow you to look at a number of different KPIs simultaneously. So a couple of key ones that we pay attention to is obviously, like we talked about here, your behavioral breakdowns, your composition of first-timer alumni and loyalists, your first-timer to sophomore conversion, your localist versus non-localist, domestic versus international, just key kind of KPIs, especially if your event rotates on a year-to-year basis. That's going to be your strongest touch point to know, like, not only what are you coming into for the next year, but the next few years. Then you start to get into your, like, let's call it more sensitive KPIs. What is my organizational density? Are I starting to see the companies that are closest to us sending more or less people, spending more, spending less? Is there exhibitor to sponsorship ratio of dollars churned? There's probably about a dozen that you want to keep an eye on that you can scorecard and go, okay, here's the level of health of my show. And if I only had a limited amount of resources, and I would love to know if the audience here feels like they have an abundance of time and money. Everyone's coming into an extremely and an extremely resource constrained environment. So where am I putting my time, energy, my human capital, and my dollars? That's where we start.
Can I add on to that, Joe? And what was Joe's perfectly kind of stated it. And I would say, coming from the event tech side, are you actually capturing the proper information as well too? There are many times when I see outdated registration forms, outdated exhibitor forms, forms that have been rolled over from year to year to year. They're not asking the right questions. They've got outdated questions on them. There's oftentimes when we will go through these extensive, overly long registration forms that, are you guys using this information? I've seen there's like 25 survey questions on here. What does the marketing team use this? Does the sponsorship team use this? Who uses this information? If you're not using it, get rid of it. Find better things to track. I think that's a huge part of, like I said, gathering valuable data and then turning it into meaningful insight.
That's the easiest place to start, by the way. Can't double click on that enough, because you can't do anything I talked about unless you're collecting the right information.
Yes, and I always say data should help you understand your appetite, not just activity, right? Like, what are we going to do with this? You both are saying the same thing. Like, what segments were underrepresented last time? What sessions were the highest attended, and were repeat topics high on people's lists? What formats did they engage with or not? I do hope if organizers are gathering it, that they do pay it forward, Lawrence, to your point, because otherwise, what are we doing, right? It's just collecting numbers for a report that sits in a shared file somewhere and nobody looks at. So yeah, it can show you unmet demand. Like, it can reduce risk, but shouldn't eliminate imagination from the creativity that we all need to bring to put on a great event.
All right, thank you so much, panelists. It's interesting to hear what usual KPIs or trends associations should first look at when trying to predict a success of a new event format. And moving forward, I'm sure many of you are already waiting for this, the Q&A portion. Reminder to the audience, you can continue to send in questions as we go through them. We will work on answering as many as we can. For now, I don't think I see any on the live chat, but we did have a couple come through our registration, so I'm going to go through that. I think this first question would best come for Lawrence first, because you kind of already talked about meaningful data or meaningful feedback. So this question is, how can associations capture meaningful feedback from attendees that goes deeper than a standard post-event survey?
It's a good question. So like I said, your actual capture of data starts way before the actual event itself, right? It is the communications you're sending for pre-registration. It's going further than that. It starts at the event the year before. Wherever you're doing that year event before, that's where you start off, because now you're starting to open up and start talking about that journey, what leads into the next year. Then it's your marketing, your email campaigns, open rates, how people are engaging. I think a lot of the times people often treat their, especially if we're talking about an annual event, they're treating that as the 100% of the engagement point. Whereas the way we kind of like to look at it is, you should be doing a ton of stuff leading up to that, whether it's pre-conferences, pre-webinars, engagements, meetups, first-time attendee get-togethers that are allowing these people to meet each other, and then once they get to the actual event, then collect together and experience the journey together. I think that's where you kind of start to see people not treating the lead up to the event as a starting point of starting to collect your data, and just using the event itself as in, let's just look at the data that happened at the event. It happens way before that, it happens during, and then it happens post. And I think you kind of have to take that holistic 365 view of, when you're looking at your data, how do you look at it, and what are you trying to capture when you're trying to capture it.
All right. Thank you so much for those insights, Lawrence. Bill, anything to add there?
Yeah, I agree with Lawrence. I think to add additional ideas would be in the qualitative side. Organizers that do first-timer listening sessions on site during an event get real-time feedback from first-timers on what's working, while they can articulate it and do something about it. Or focus groups with exhibitors, sponsors, attendees who've been there before. We secret shop events for organizations too, just a third party set of eyes on it to provide back a scorecard and areas to improve. I mean, that's something that I would say could be done every year. It's just putting people in charge of, how are we going to make this better, with that being the job on site, not just executing the current event.
Yes. Thank you, Bill. Yes, Joe.
Yeah, it's interesting, because data collection by and large is always a trade-off between friction and outcome. And so I think what we're moving into is going to be mentioned in the question, like kind of the post-event survey. That's been the leader in the clubhouse for 100 years of how events have been generally measured. And this isn't necessarily to say don't do that, but I think what we're going to start to see, and some folks are already putting this in play, is, and this dovetails off what Bill said, being able to have some of these micro areas where you're able to capture a little bit of insight. So coming out of a session room and having 2 questions pop up on your app, or even the sad, medium, and happy face. What did you think of what's going on here? There's some second screen technologies where it's capturing not just the audience sentiment, but what's actually being said in the room, and distilling that out into trending topics that you're hearing across other areas. And so the level of data capture is only going up. The data fidelity of these touch points are only going up. If you used, like an Otter AI 2.5, 3 years ago compared to today, or a Fireflies, whoever your favorite, meeting recorder is, you'll realize just the amount of information that you can now distill. We're starting to see that those tool sets make their way into feedback for face-to-face engagements. And I think we're just we're in the first out of the first inning of this right now.
Yes, completely agree. Thank you so much, Joe. And panelists, it's great to know that looking outside just post-event communications for a more holistic data capture and understanding of members is the best way to go about it, not just looking within the event, but also other things that your association is doing. So I see that we have a couple of questions come in from our live audience. I'll go ahead and start from Evan. Understanding that there is no one format or feature that perfectly fits every conference, are there specific trends you are seeing in terms or events, engagements, or programming that is being well received by conference attendees? So for now, I'll hand this first to Bill, then Joe, then Lawrence.
Yeah, something I've seen a lot of over the last several show cycles is the neighborhooding style of organizing the exhibit hall or area where everyone is meeting to do business and network. Really leaning into making it an environment that makes people want to stick around. And by that I mean, it is a neighborhood. It feels like you're in a small town, or it feels like you're in an organized destination. Not a theme park, but something that has the feel of thought through, nice touches, clear navigation. Because otherwise, rows and booths and things like that in an exhibit hall, that's okay too. But for those who want people to stick around more, I've seen that have success.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're seeing or actively measuring most, and so I don't know if this is signal or it's only getting to our footsteps because folks are interested in measuring it, the decision's already been made, is bringing more session content on, I would call it either on the show floor or show floor adjacent. And so this kind of dovetails on what Bill's saying, but it's like getting out of the mindset of like, oh, if I'm down this set of halls, I should only be learning. If I'm down this set of halls, I should only be talking to, suppliers and service providers and things like that. And we're hearing a lot of culling the program. Who are the winners and losers? Is 300 sessions the right number? Does that align with what our competitors are doing, what we're seeing in the marketplace in terms of interest areas? Does it align with other areas of content we're producing, the other 360 days the association's doing this stuff? Because sometimes it can be a lagging indicator if you're doing, sessions from your constituency or the marketplace. There's a little bit of recycling done there. Spoiler alert, folks. And so you want to make sure that you have a modern program to roll out.
So I'll jump on top of that and kind of go in a parallel, and I'll take this from an experiential base. I recently attended to 2 different conferences as a actual attendee, and was sitting in on sessions, and 2 times, and the speakers were great, the content was fantastic, but at the 30-minute mark, I legitimately could not focus anymore. We've got to kind of break this model of 1-hour sessions. I think that adults have a deficit of being able to focus for that long now. I noticed people around me right about that 30-minute mark, started picking up the phones, looking around. Some people actually started leaving. And it was not the fault of the presenter themselves. It was not the fault of the content. The content was excellent. People were still taking notes. It's just the ability to be able to focus for 1 hour is no longer part of the human genome. I think the whole educational side needs to take a look at not only for adults that no longer have this attention span, but we know the younger people definitely want things in smaller snippets. Their whole life is built around being able to crunch information, be able to receive information in a very truncated space. I think, like I said, if we're talking about revolutionary ideas, if we're talking about really kind of standing things up, especially in that educational space, I think micro sessions. I think if you can start to come together and find ways to disseminate information in 5, 15-minute sections, 30 minutes at the most for maybe panel type things, I think that'll be a huge win. I think it also lifts a lot of the burden off the presenters as well, too. I think you'll have an expansion amongst the presenters to know that I only have to present 30 minutes worth of information, which could end up being 15 minutes of actual talking, 15 minutes of Q&A. And I think it also expands the ability for you to be able to offer a better and more robust and rounded platform of content as well, too. So that would be one of the ones I'd really think if we could start looking at how we reshape how seminars are kind of designed, how they're built out, where they're placed, how they're integrated into the show. I think that would be a huge win in the educational space.
So I just have a question for you, Lawrence. I can't argue the opposite. I agree with you. Shorter is better. I agree with you on the attention span front. I'm curious how much of it is also, when you go in, we've all been in these rooms, and like you said, it could be great content, they could be great speakers, but the cake's kind of baked 20 minutes in. Right? You know where it's going. There's no reload. There's no re-arc. If this is a movie, you're landing the plane. You're not hitting that kind of key area of adrenaline rush or adventure. And so how do we give the agency to the speaker to go, hey, guess what? You can actually talk about two things. You can reboot 20 minutes in and go, you know what? Now I'm going to pivot to something completely different. And we're going to do, because otherwise I think you're just looking at a baked cake and you're like, I got it. I'm going to go to my phone now. I haven't touched that in a while.
You got it. Right, good. Yeah, exactly. Like I say, especially if you get into like a micro session, a 15-minute, it could be a single topic. I'm coming here to give you one fantastic idea, one concept. We're going to talk about that, and then you can move on. And like I said, and then if you break those down, and now you could actually have, like I said, a track with just that, whereas 15-minute bites or 20-minute bites of a concept that all tie together, as opposed to sitting in a room for an entire hour trying to talk about multiple things and tying them together.
Yes, and organizers are insisting that speakers in their submissions articulate how they're going to engage the audience as like a table stakes now, where it used to be a hope, a dream that somebody might talk to the audience and break the one-way sage on the stage thing. And now I'm on education committees for events that it's a detractor if the speaker is not clear about in terms of accepting their submission. It lowers their score because people, like you both have said, they want that, they need that. That's why they're getting on a plane and going somewhere instead of just getting it online.
I wish it was more like socially acceptable to challenge the ideas too. Somebody just have the guts to raise their hand and just go, you know what, I think that could go in a completely opposite direction. When I'm up there talking, I would absolutely love that. Like I'm like looking at folks and they're kind of giving me that side eye. I'm like, do it. I would love to hear it. Can we
bring it? Now, it's funny you said that, because that was another concept, because I'm trying to hit one concept, but another one I think of is going into sessions where you're just being talked at, right? Like they're literally just talking at you, and you might have a Q&A at the end. I would really like to see more content, like you said, that is interactive the entire time, whether it's preceded questions before you come in, or it's legitimately, hey, I'm going to go sit in the audience and you guys just ask me questions. Like I come up with maybe a 5-minute opener to kind of set the stage of what we're looking for, or even if it's a problem solving type of solution, like, hey, we are going to talk about data analytics, right? I'm going to give you a 5-minute overview of what I do and what we can do. Now you bring me real life instances from your event, what you're looking for, what you're trying to achieve, and let's solve those problems. Because I think a lot of people come to conferences, not only for education, but looking for solutions for problems, and they're not necessarily getting answers to the problems. They're maybe just getting information that they then have to then go redigest and then see if it applies to an answer, as opposed to, hey, can you give me an answer? Like I really have a problem and I really need an answer for it. Just like the questions that we just got in the chat here, right?
Yep.
All right, thank you so much. This is a very interesting course of conversation. Very nice to hear your thoughts and insights. And thank you, Evan, for sending in that question. We appreciate you joining us today. And since we are kind of running out of time, I am going to have to pivot this conversation to our other audience question over here from Randy. Let's treat this as a little bit of a speed round, a little bit shorter this time, so that we can move and end the session on time. From Randy, they say that we have a mature event with an audience of 6,000 plus end users, not decision makers or buyers. Because of this, we emphasize education as the primary focus of a conference and trade show. What else should we be doing? I'm going to open this floor to whoever wants to jump in first.
Well, in terms of education as a primary focus, not knowing exactly what industry it is, if you're looking to grow, you're going to need education that's adjacent to whatever your core audience is. And so identifying those audience members and tailoring, even if it's just a pilot, something, it doesn't have to break the bank, but something that would allow you to test whether, if it's an education focused event, stay in your sweet spot of education and try to supplement or add to the breadth of it would be a suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, it's an open-ended question, which I love. I'll maybe take a little bit more of a controversial approach, and you're
imagine that.
Yeah. The direct I mean, if everyone's coming back every year and they love the education, fantastic. You're on the right route. I think what Bill said is absolutely like the next step. Figure out what the sprinkle or the cherry on top looks like. But if you feel like, we should be moving in an outward direction because there's more that we can do, and maybe it's not for pure growth, but because maybe our content isn't satisfying 100% of the need or our positioning in the marketplace anymore, then I think you need to be hyper aggressive about talking to your existing customers about what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, and what maybe is going sideways. So take a pure product development mindset, get knee deep into the data, and be like, we're trying to get better, and your opinion is going to absolutely foster that. And I think it's a combination of things like surveys, focus groups. Maybe you're going out and talking to your content committee. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? But a dedicated focused effort, not in the event production life cycle, but almost like an R&D type mentality. We're taking this thing down to the studs, and we're trying to figure out what the next version of it looks like. But if everything's candy canes and rainbows, then it's an and. This is more of the or, right?
Yeah.
I would say quickly, if you look at parallel to education, and like I said, if I take personal experience as my journey is kind of extended, if you look at offering and seeing where you offer professional development along with education, and then mentorship programs as well too. That's a huge need in the industry. Mentors don't exist like they used to back in the day, and mentorship has become a big part of education and in development. And that is a good track to see if that's something you can stand up, because I know there are people who are out there willing to be mentors and people who need to be mentored. And I think it goes hand in hand with education. You can have all the education in the world, but you don't quite know how to apply it, where it goes, what's best for you, what you should be doing in your own professional development, how you get to the next level with your education. So I think those kind of go hand in hand. I think that is kind of a short cycle in the industry. So that's another one you probably want to look at.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you so much, panelists. So we are actually getting to the last few minutes of questions with this amazing group. If we don't get to your question, or if you have any more specific questions to your organization, that we want to make sure that you are connected with the relevant team to answer them. So we sent a quick survey for you in the chat, where you can indicate which panelists you particularly want to hear from after the session, as well as provide any feedback on this panel. I'll share your interest with the relevant panelists after this session as we receive your answers. All right. So we are going to wrap up this Q&A portion of the panel for now, so we could stick to our schedule. I've had such a wonderful time hearing from our panelists here today, and so I am hoping to get one final piece of insight from them all. So our last question for today is, how can a team execute a redesign when they are facing declining budgets? And please let us know where where the audience could find you and your organization. Let's go ahead and start with Bill.
Yeah, never let a crisis go to waste is what I would say. Declining budgets, it forces us to prioritize our needs, right? So if we've got lower budget to work with, think of it as a resource allocation exercise where you are looking at your lowest value or highest complex, aspects of your event, and you're asking the tough questions of, do we really need this element that costs us a lot that may not really deliver something of value clearly? So I would use it as a chance to trim in areas that you probably have known that you've needed to, in order to make up for some of that lack of a budget. But always, always, always coming back to the purpose of the event and the people that it serves. Because if the event you're designing does not connect those two things, who the people are and what they care about and how the event delivers on it, then you shouldn't be investing in that. So when it comes down to the budget question, always bring it back to people and purpose.
Yeah, that kind of leans on what I would say. It's like, you need to re-examine who is our audience, what are we trying to achieve, where are we trying to do it, when. You kind of have to take all those core elements and re-examine. If you're working with a tighter budget, then re-explore all those different elements and start kind of from the scratch and see if we are actually overspending, not spending appropriately, if we can reallocate. You got to kind of re-examine what it is, who you are trying to connect with, and trying to get them what they need. So that would be my short answer. It's kind of examining your who, what, why, when, where.
Yeah, for me, I think it's just really focus on actual ROI. When it comes to the budget conversation, everybody knows their eyes down to the decimal, right? It goes back to that budgeting comment. But when you actually start to put the data story together on the R, all of a sudden, to Bill's point, to Lawrence's point, well, now I know what's winning. Now I know what's maybe struggling and maybe what's losing. It sheds a light of what used to be in a shadow. And so if you take a diligent exercise at that, all of a sudden that budget cut actually starts to make sense. And by the way, when you start to show where you're winning and you go, hey, this mousetrap is actually going to win more if we give it more money, that's when you start to see budgets go up.
Right. Very true.
Right. Thank you so much, lovely panelists. So before I officially close this session, I just wanted to do a little round robin between Bill, then Joe, then Lawrence. Please let our audience know where they can find you and your organization. Bill, how do you start?
Sure, yeah. So 360livemedia.com, that's our 360 Live Media is our agency. We are a full service events agency serving associations and nonprofits. Love to work with you all.
All right, Joe?
Yeah, you can reach me at www.bearanalytics.com or Joe, at bearanalytics.com. That's my actual email. Don't hesitate to reach out. If you think like we do that data is the longest term asset that your events are generating, let's have a conversation.
Yeah, pretty easy to find me as well. It's at www.goeshow.com. And you can always find me on LinkedIn. I am very active on LinkedIn. It's Lawrence-Givens-Business. Be happy to connect with anybody. Like I said, and everybody here, we all work together as well. So yeah, feel free to reach out. As you can tell, I'm a pretty personable guy. You can ask me anything.
All right. And with that, we have reached the end of our panel. I want again to give a huge thank you to our panelists for sharing their insights today. And I also want to thank everyone who attended today's panel and anyone who may be watching this on demand. I hope you enjoyed yourself and learned something that will benefit the work that you do on a daily basis. This session is once again brought to you by NXUnite, an initiative of Nexus Marketing. As the top global agency for B2B marketing to mission-driven sectors, Nexus specializes in helping businesses become the default answer for buyers in the nonprofit, association, education, and healthcare spaces. Whether you need support in SEO, AI visibility, HubSpot, or branding and design, the Nexus team has the subject matter expertise to support your digital strategy. You can find us at nexusmarketing.com and through our socials, which we've linked in the chat. So we have a packed few months of panels ahead of us, and I hope you will also join us for them. Keep an eye on the NXUnite community platform or the NXUnite LinkedIn page to make sure that you don't miss out of any of these. Better yet, go ahead and sign up now. It takes one click to RSVP once you are logged in. It has been a pleasure speaking with you all. Thank you all and have a great day. Bye-bye.